Chris here, back in Oneonta, doing a little walk and talk action with my karma right here. And if you checked out my video today so far, I did one on quantum computing, and in particular, I pointed to a guy named Geordie Rose. Now, Geordie Rose is, a guy I think is interesting. I think he's obviously very, very smart. But I was talking about how I needed to watch this new presentation that he had done and that was uploaded in late June based in synthetic minds, artificial intelligence. Because for those that don't know, Geordie Rose is kind of like this entrepreneur and guru for quantum computing and then artificial intelligence, whatever you actually think that is. And it was really interesting because, I said that his speech was in 2015. Well, it was actually in 2013. I think they just uploaded it in 2015. And it was the same guy who was presenting him, right? So right out of the gates, one of the things that caught my ear is, you heard me talk about how, Goldman Sachs and Bezos were invested, et cetera, et cetera. And I think Bezos was actually mentioned and somebody else. But they mentioned the CIA as well. So, the Central Intelligence Agency was buying these D-Wave machines that were at $10 million. I want people to be very, very aware of that. So this presentation, instead of just being about, quantum computing, in fact, it wasn't about that at all. And theory, I'll say this, at least he started a little bit more humble in the sense, look, I could be wrong. Or these are prevailing thoughts among people in this quantum physics field, and they could be wrong. And at one point, he puts a graph up, not a graph, I guess a model, okay, like a boxed model with text. I encourage everybody to go check this out. Again, if you see my last video, you'll see the one from June that I'm talking about. So he puts up this model of what the mind is. Now, to go into a precursor of this, what he essentially thinks the mind is or isn't in the very beginning, or consciousness is or isn't, and where it resides, I think might be a small point of contention for me. For instance, before he shows this model, he starts talking about how consciousness, or your mind, your thoughts, all reside inside of your brain. There's nowhere else it happens. Now, I don't know if that's the case. There are theories out there, the thousand monkey theory, that there is some kind of a group consciousness or thread. And I think that you can't initially discount that. There's also some other pretty decent TED Talks out there where, they go into the fact that, that's not really proven. We may see like the electrical impulses of whatever's going on in our mind through brain activity, etc., right? But it could go well beyond that. We don't really know what consciousness is. So then, as he goes through this model of the mind, and it's like this circular cycle loop of what the mind is doing and how the mind basically extends out into your movement that then creates reality that influences the mind, et cetera, et cetera. And that's a very big simplification of the loop. But he does it in about 3 minutes. Interesting. But what you have to understand is that Kindred, they are building the AI robots. Hear that, Carm? They're building them. It's a real thing. And, he wants to remodel these things. And what really upset me is not only through the entire thing, he was trying to point to similarities and assimilate almost human activity to what is pre-programmed algorithmic activity. He points to, I think it was Alpha 1, the system that initially beat the best chess masters the fastest and now has been superseded many times over, right? But then he talks about, as an example of some kind of like a artificial intelligence with a goal, right? With a goal that succeeded, were Russian bots in our elections. And when he peddled that bullshit, all I could think to myself is, wow, this guy is taking a real big establishment line on that, because that's just not the case. Anybody who's done the investigation knows that the Russian troll bot farms did not influence our election in anywhere near what they have claimed to do. Anyhow, let's continue on with Mr. Rose. He kind of wraps it up in a scary fashion. He warns about what these machines will be programmed with, because he's trying to make human-like machines, right? And how they'll react. Okay, that's interesting. But then he says, and he makes a good point here, he talks about how, there's this new level of depression because human beings are no longer interacting with one another, right? They're interacting with the screen in front of them. I mean, half my audience right now, and by the way, let's thumb them up, 41 watching, 15 thumbs, is probably watching on a smartphone or a small device. And in some way, for those that never got their social skills or maybe didn't have them in a prevalent manner to begin with, there's a rest period there. And I think we're going to take a rest on this bench really quick, Karma, to wrap up this walk and talk in a nice little manner. But then he says, you know what? Here's the deal. Maybe this is the solution to this depression. Not to get out and interact with more humans, not to talk to more people. And by the way, that was one of the best things that I was able to do yesterday at my buddy's wedding. Right, Carm? I missed my Karma, but I missed seeing a lot of my friends I hadn't seen in a decade or more as well. And I thought, that was a really great opportunity. I had a great time yesterday, catching up. And that's one of the things I think that makes us human. He was talking about the lack of companionship. Well, that's scary, because if we start looking to artificial intelligence and robots that we build for companionship, we've already built a really soft society that in many cases, most people can't take the brutal truths, right? But sometimes, and I hope most times, especially good friends, will tell you the brutal truth, right? Hey, bro, you are fucking up right now. You need to clean your shit up. Because if you have this infinite feedback loop of an artificial friend, I mean, do you think that's we're already interacting with screens all the time, and less and less with actual people. Do you think somehow an avatar, or maybe, they pushed the idea of robotic pets that will interact? And I've seen that creepy movie, Her, with Spike Jonze. And I hope that that's not prophetic. I'm not sure if you guys have ever seen Her, but I remember they were saying what a great movie it was. But I felt uneasy and I hated it, and it was so creepy. The dude was creepy. The idea that Scarlett Johansson's voice in a pocket-like device that looked like a cell phone from 10 years ago, you were going to fall in love with that thing? What are we doing? What are we doing? Some of my, most amazing points in life, what I look forward to the most is spending with my family, real people. My once a year trip that me and the kids take to the water park. That's a highlight. The few times a year maybe I get out to go see a concert with one of my friends or my brother. That's a highlight, right? Those are the good times of endorphins. You're getting out there. You're with people. You're with your friends, your family. You're talking. You're doing something. You're creating a moment. You're creating enjoyment. And by the way, he talked about in that model, like receiving, that positive feeling. And that to me is positive. Going out to an MMA event for a day or a weekend, again, with your friends, your family, doing something you enjoy. There's time to, enjoy entertainment. I'm not anti-entertainment, but you should also know what the hell's going around on in the world, Again, one of the big highlights of that video I did on quantum computing is the fact that most people are still focusing on the idea that, Google and YouTube are censoring quote-unquote conservatives. And listen, the censorship on the internet is a big issue, but as I said, it's way beyond conservatives. It's going to go well beyond just political things. It'll go also against people that financially won't make them as much money as those that have invested in them. And as we have less and less companies, Disney owns just about every commodity, right, in the entertainment industry. You're gonna want to drive out other competition, and that's it. That's the whole deal, right, Carm? Yeah, and that's just another level of it. But at the same time, Google's not going anywhere because they're working with our government, NASA, on deep mine projects, on AI projects. NASA goes way, way beyond just quote unquote space travel. It's a military industrial complex institution. That's the real deal. With that being said, we talk about the military industrial complex, the realities of it. We talk about things like Jeffrey Epstein, NXIVM, R. Kelly, John Bolton, quantum mechanics, and much more. So make sure you thumbs this video up, share it with others. We take the walk and talks with Karma, and we're going to continue to do so for as long as we can. And I got to go fund me if you want to financially support me. That's about it. I'll see you guys on the flip side with more news. Thank you so much for watching. Burmese Brigade all the way.